Every year, millions of people set a language learning goal. They make a plan, they sign up for a course, download an app, hire a tutor. They start with real motivation and real effort. And then life gets busy. Deadline, a difficult week, a family disruption, and everything collapses. When that happens, most people say the same thing to themselves. I wasn't consistent enough. I didn't have the right conditions. I need to try harder next time. What if I tell you that's not the real reason? What if the problem isn't your consistency, your conditions, or your effort, but something much more fundamental that nobody has ever pointed out to you, the system itself? That's what this video is about. If you are new to this channel, I'm Zoe. I'm a self-made polyglot. I speak 8 languages and I'm also a researcher in sociology. So when I try to understand a problem, I don't just draw on personal experience. I look for patterns across people, across contexts, across data. What we are talking about today is based on research I've been doing over the past several months. I've been trying to build a system grounded in my own experience of learning languages as an adult in demanding, imperfect conditions that could help other curious adults learn the language in a way that actually holds. Not just for a few weeks, for life. To test it, I started with a small experiment. I worked directly with a group of adult language learners, coaching them one-on-one over several weeks. I ran diagnostic sessions at the beginning, checking through the process and carefully changed what happened, what worked, what broke, and why. These were people from different countries, learning different languages at very different stages of their lives. I went in expecting to find different problems, different people, different situations. I assumed the patterns would be varied. They weren't. What I found, repeated across every single person, were 5 specific things that kept breaking. 5 points where the learning collapsed. The first pattern was the one I saw most consistently and the one that frustrated people the most. Learning would start well. A routine, real momentum, visible progress, and then life would happen. A work deadline, a difficult week, a family disruption, and everything would stop. What struck me wasn't the stopping. Life interrupts everyone. What struck me was what happened next. The inability to recover. The momentum was gone, and getting it back feels like starting over completely. One learner had tried everything to build momentum. Private tutoring, grammar exercises, podcasts, flashcard apps, an accumulation of tools and methods, each started with hope. None of them connected into something doable. She said, "Oh, it was just an accumulation of trying many things, nothing stuck." Another learner described a different version of the same collapse. She would sit down to study and spend the first 20 minutes just deciding what to do. Duolingo or podcast, list this app or that app, grammar or vocabulary. By the time she made a decision, the energy for learning was already gone. She said that, "I get excited and I want to learn everything, but I end up with long lists I can't keep up with." I recognized all of this immediately because I lived it myself. The collapse was built into the design from the very beginning. This is not a motivation problem. Every one of these people was motivated. The system they were using only survived ideal conditions, and ideal conditions are not real life. The second pattern was different in texture and in some ways more demoralizing than the first. These were learners who hadn't collapsed, who had maintained a practice, who had put in real hours, real money, real effort, and still couldn't produce the language when it mattered. One learner had completed every single lesson on one of the most popular language apps available, every module, every exercise, every level. He'd done it all. And when he sat down with a native speaker, he couldn't hold a real conversation. He said, "I finished all the lessons and I still can't speak." I knew this feeling too. When I was in China learning French, I followed the course exactly as I was supposed to. I studied the textbook, I did every exercise, I did everything I was told. And when I finally needed to speak, nothing was there. The input had gone in, nothing was coming out. I didn't understand why. That gap between everything you've consumed and what you can actually produce is not a talent gap. It's a structural gap, and it's completely invisible until someone shows you exactly where to look. The third pattern was the one that broke people the most. Not failing to make progress, but making real visible progress and then watching it disappear. One learner had reached a strong intermediate level. She could follow conversations, navigate her daily life. Then the external structure holding her learning together ended, the course finished, the tutor relationship stopped, and time, the level faded. She said, I didn't really have a clear system. I was going through so many things, but nothing was connected. When the external structure disappeared, there was nothing underneath it. Another had told herself for years that the solution was to go back to the beginning, to restart from A1, study everything systematically, make sure she never made mistakes. This time, she had restarted several times. Each time, the same thing happened. What all of these learners shared was this: the progress they built belonged to the external structure. The course, the teacher, the program. When the structure ended, the progress went with it, because they had never built something that truly belonged to them. Learning that lives inside an external structure will always disappear when that structure ends. The goal is a system that belongs to the learner, not to the program. There were two more patterns in the data. I want to name them briefly. The first one, wasted investment. Every person in the beta had already spent money on language learning before we started, on tutors, apps, courses, tools. The accumulated disappointment make them hesitant, even angry, idea of trying it again. The second, daily decision fatigue. No internal logic to trust, no clear way to question what to actually do today. Every session started with the negotiation that cost energy before a single word was learned. 5 patterns, 5 points of a collapse, and every single person experiencing some versions of them. Here's the thing that stuck me most across all these sessions. Every single person, without exception, blamed themselves. They thought they weren't disciplined enough, consistent enough, talented enough. They thought they were the problem, that other people managed these and something about them specifically made it impossible. It wasn't about them. Underneath all 5 of these patterns, there is one inherited belief, one thing that almost every adult language learner has absorbed from school, from apps, from the entire culture around language learning, that quietly works against them at every stage. Language learning is about finding the right tools, the right methods, the right conditions, and putting in enough time and effort. That belief sounds completely reasonable. It might even sound obvious. Of course, you need good tools. Of course, effort matters. But this is exactly the belief that produces every single one of those 5 patterns. The collapses, the speaking gap, the inability to keep what you built. All of the trace back here. So the next time your learning collapses, the next time you miss a week, lost momentum, feel like you are back at zero, don't ask yourself, why can't I be more consistent? Ask different questions. What in my design made this inevitable? Not you, the design, the system. That shift from self-blame to structural diagnosis is where everything starts. And it's a shift that every single person in my beta had to make before anything they could change. As I mentioned at the beginning, based on everything I've found in this research, I'm building a program, a structured system designed specifically for adult learners who are done restarting. I'm still refining it, still analyzing the data, and honestly, at this stage, the most valuable thing is the people who come in at the beginning, who are willing to share their experience, give honest feedback, and help shape what this becomes. If any of what I described today resonated, if you recognize yourself in those 5 patterns, and you are curious about being part of this from the very start, I've opened a founding member waitlist. The link is in the description. It's a way to stay close to what's being built and to have your voice be part of it. And please tell me in the comments, which of these 5 patterns do you recognize most in yourself? I believe your story will shape what I build next. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like. I will see you in the next one. Bye!